Hi, it's Cara Brown, and this is Watercolor Conversations. It's a place where I share my love of watercolor and my seeking, my teaching, my discoveries, the connections I see, and just in general what it's like to be alive at this time here on planet Earth. I hope that this meets a part of you that's longing to be met. Thanks for being here. Hi, it's Cara. The year started off with a bang, and I've got a new website coming, and I've been really consumed with it, so I'm sorry for the long pause, but I'm here, and I have an episode for you. I also have another one coming too. There are two that are burbling in me right now. This one feels particularly seasonal. Here we are in the very beginning of April 2025. It's based on a post I wrote that I entitled, "What Brings Us Alive?" I had a recent experience, which I will tell you about at the end, which made me think about this post and how it might be fun to share here on the pod. The stories that I told in the post are dated. You know, these things happened a long time ago and life is very different, but they're pertinent. So I'm going to tell them again because they're here and they're good stories. I started the post by saying that my mom and dad hosted a dinner almost every Sunday evening. This was when my dad was still alive and still very much able to cook. He has since passed away, and in the last part of his life, he wasn't cooking. We would come and cook for him because he taught us all. But he was a chef, and though he didn't work professionally anymore, he loved cooking for his family. So every Sunday night we gathered. So by Sunday, my mom would send out a text, and later actually my dad learned to text, so he would send them. This is what Dad's cooking and who's coming. The Sunday before I wrote this, all four of my brothers and I were there. The four siblings were there along with our families. And it was such a great way that we all connected with my brothers and their loved ones. I hadn't seen my brothers, Matt or Mike, my younger brothers, in several weeks. We'd been missing each other, especially Mike, because at the time he lived in San Francisco and he has a super busy travel schedule, still does, even more busy. He has a job with Apple Computer where he's responsible for their retail stores, and so that means he's all over the place. But that Sunday, he blew in the door just as we were sitting down to eat. He'd just driven from Sacramento, a couple hours drive away, where he was helping to build a new building for the people who run the rafting company where he and his wife, Julie, take a river trip every summer. The weekend was spent framing and sheeting the new roof. So after working all weekend and a 2-hour drive, he practically burst through the door filled with energy. He seemed taller and younger. His face looked more angular, and the slight sunburn on his face gave him this healthy ruggedness. He even moved differently in his body. As he chowed down on a big plate of food, he'd worked really hard and he had to refuel. I kept marveling at how alive he was. When I told him, he said he felt alive. He'd been up and down a ladder probably 50 times all day, and it seemed like he could go on and on. 50 more, he said. It was great, he said, to put his bags on, that's his carpentry bags, and do something physical, tangible. All the practical knowledge of building a roof, which can be quite complicated, angles and ratios and things, was right there. He'd not forgotten any of it. And at the time, although things have changed since, he said he wanted to figure out how to retire so he could go to work for our oldest brother, Joe, who's a general contractor, doing physical work, building stuff. So how's that? Retire so you can go work hard? I was not able to stop thinking about Mike and the impact that doing something that he loves to do and feels made to do had on not just his energy, but his physical body, his presence, his whole being. I came home and shared with my husband, Joe, because he wasn't there that night, and asked if that thing was flying airplanes, and he said it was. He comes home from flying a different guy. It's like he's had fresh jolt of life force. I've been up in the plane with him a couple of times, and I know that flying is immensely consuming. He's focused on nothing but the checklist, the instruments, the radio communications. He's in full command of the airplane. I can tell he's a really, really good pilot. It engages his brain, his knowledge, and I think there's something about the rigor that's required, making literally life and death decisions that appeals to him. On top of that, he's on top of the world. My guy is a big picture guy, and the perspective from thousands of feet in the air is how he likes to see. So then I wondered, what is this for me? What brings me alive like this? You'd think it would be painting, wouldn't you? As much as I'm compelled to paint, and I love color and creating beauty, the actual act of painting in watercolor in the way I do it doesn't impact me this way. For me, painting is more something that I must do in order to stay in good shape. If I don't, it get crabby, but it's just also how I know that I'm living my purpose. But I don't feel like Mike looked on that Sunday when I've been painting. But then I remembered what I had done the day before the dinner, which was Saturday. I spent the day with Lenore and Sue, who are dear friends. We were new at the time, but now we are very good longer-term friends, and we are all artists, watercolorists, and we went to Filoli, this gorgeous garden in Woodside, south of San Francisco, and it's an estate that was established about 100 years ago, and it was donated to the county of San Mateo, and it's surrounded by 16 acres of beautifully maintained formal gardens. The day we were there was a perfect spring day to walk through a flower garden. There was still plenty of tulips in pots. The tree peonies were going full force. The camellias were at the end of their bloom, but the rhododendrons were just getting started. Enormous purple and white wisterias graced the sides of the mansion and were at their peak, fragrant and buzzing with bees. Just a couple climbing roses were blooming, but in a few weeks after that, the rose garden would explode with color and scent. Sue and I discovered that we both love apple blossoms. They're sweet, chubby flowers with just a hint of pink on the buds and green leaves at the same time as the flowers. Green and pink is a wonderful combination I am a sucker for. We found ourselves completely obsessed with this one apple tree and took a whole bunch of pictures in hopes that one would call out, "Paint me." So the update to that is you could go to my website and look in the other flowers gallery and you can see Eden, which is a 40 by 40 watercolor with apple blossoms and bees, was the result of this obsession with Sue. And it was so fun to be with someone who loves something just as crazily as I do. Lenore eventually lured us away to see the pink dogwoods in prime, full bloom. Oh my goodness. Beauty everywhere. On Saturday, that day, I experienced in my body why we use the expression breathtaking. I relived it as I wrote, feeling the energy rise in me, expanding my chest with joy and aliveness. And I am again now, here in 2025. Being in a beautiful place like this brings me alive. Then another memory sifted back. It was the previous October, and after an 11-hour flight, I was riding in an airport shuttle van as it entered the city of Paris. Like carbonation, I felt energy bubble through me at the sight of those Parisian buildings with their blue and white street signs on the corners. Paris. I was there, really there. Though I'd slept little on the plane and my body was reeling from being whooshed 9 time zones away, I had the energy to walk for several hours before having a bite to eat and giving my body what it was craving on the flight to be resting fully horizontal. I'm a different version of me when I'm in Paris. It's almost an ancient version of myself, like I lived there in a past life. Paris brings me alive. It's more subtle, but I feel a version of this aliveness at the start of every painting group and workshop as people arrive filled with appreciation for each other and the time we get to spend together. And for me, our groups have a restorative impact, and it's as if they all arrive famished to a lavish table of food. And that I get to provide the environment for this kind of nourishment fills me with purpose and fulfillment, which is maybe not quite as high-flying, but it is a sense of alive. It's a grounded aliveness. So this brings me to the more recent experience. A canvas-wrapped giclée print showed up in the studio because Sandra Blake had found it on the sidewalk near her house and it was free. So she brought it in thinking maybe we would do something with it. I don't know, it's probably been here a year. And I've been thinking, what am I going to do with this thing all throughout that time? And most recently, I decided that I wanted to paint it with watercolor. I wanted to paint over it with watercolor and put it above our bed because it's nice and light, and I didn't want to have a big, heavy framed with plexiglass and wood frame piece over our bed because we live in earthquake country, and I tend to be a little bit neurotic about some things. I had already collected the supplies, and the weekend before last, I found myself setting up 5-gallon buckets from the paint cabinet in the garage with drop cloths, and I put the canvas out there and put 2 coats of acrylic gesso and then another coat of watercolor ground on it. Once it dried, I drove it in here to the studio and put it up on the wall with the projector. And I have this beautiful soft, it's not a bright orange yellow, it's a soft pink and blue sunset sky with puffy clouds and some palm trees and lava rocks and the ocean. It's this lovely, soft, quiet scene from Kauai. I know my husband's going to love it, and it's going to be wonderful to have it over our bed. I loved getting in action, doing something new. I have a strong penchant, I guess the word is, for R&D, for research and development. So new things are exciting to me. So that was part of the energy, is this is new. I don't know how it's going to go. I have painted watercolor on watercolor ground on paper before. That's one that's in the Rose Gallery, and it's called Love. And it's definitely different. And I don't like it as much as paper. But this is a whole different image, and I just don't think I'm going to feel like being as fussy, and I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I'm excited to do something new. And that is what brings me alive, and I have to remember to do this. There's always stuff in life that we don't want to do, but we have to. Like the bills and taxes, and I don't know, maybe some people like to do that, but there's a lot of people doing taxes right now. It's April. I realized that even if we can't do things that bring us really alive like this every day, if we are determined to, we can carve out this space and time to do them more. I don't see myself moving to Paris, and I don't think I'm going to take on being a gardener. My little yard around me is enough. But I put a stake in the ground to say how important it is that we get enough of our own particular kind of life fuel. My brother's aliveness that Sunday back in 2016 had an impact on all of us in the room, and it inspired me to share it with you in that post then, and again with this podcast episode today. When we are alive, it has a ripple effect. Aliveness is compelling and it's contagious. So I ask you, what brings you alive? I hope you get to do it. I hope you get to bring the best of you to all of us, because think about what the world would be if we got to do what brings us alive more and more. I love thinking about stuff like that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with me today for another episode. Stay tuned for another one, and the next one's going to be practical. It's going to be about composition. Okay, take care. Till next time. Bye-bye.